This is the VIP Podcast, Virginia in Politics. Let's listen to host Chris Saxman explore the personalities and policies that connect the Commonwealth. The VIP Podcast is brought to you by the VCTA, Broadband Association of Virginia, and Virginia Free. The views and opinions expressed here do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the VCTA and Virginia Free or our sponsors.
This is Chris Saxman on the VIP Podcast. Joining me now is Bob Lewis of Virginia Mercury, formerly AP reporter extraordinaire for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and an all-around really good guy joining us on the VIP Podcast, brought to you by VCTA, the Broadband Association of Virginia, and Virginia Free, of which I am the executive director. Good morning, Bob Lewis.
Good morning, Chris. Good to be here. It's good to be anywhere.
Isn't it? After 2 years of crap.
2 years of quarantine and you name it. We haven't had a chance to go watch ball games and drink beer and all the lovely things we used to do back before the lockdowns.
One of my favorites was when I spilled an entire beer in Warren Fisk's lap at Big Al's, but we'll... he goes, yeah, I always see him. He goes, "You owe me a beer." I'm like, "I put it in your lap. What do you want?"
Oh, yeah, I miss all
Come on,
that.
Warren. This is not about me.
Yeah, and that's not where you drink it, Warren. So, I think we're easing out of the oh my God variant scare, and people are slowly getting back to normal. But I'm still, hey, I'm retired. I'm 66, and I don't take it lightly. So I've, been a good boy. I've been heeding all the warnings and going masked and everything like that. And not only that, I don't want to take it home to my wife. So, it's a good thing that I am. I don't have to punch a clock every day anymore like I did for 40 years. And, now instead of 20 minutes driving like it was today to come downtown, it's 20 steps from my bed, and there's
so when your commute
it's really cool.
Yeah, it's a lot better, I'm sure, in that regard. But let's talk about those 40 years in politics. You covered politics closely, as well as anyone has in the Commonwealth.
Thank you.
And no, truly, one of the good guys in journalism. You call it straight, you call it balls and strikes, which is not done anymore. It's an old, let me say old. It's unfortunately going away further, more and more, because our media is just changing so much. Where do you see the media changing? I mean, you've been a part of it, especially the dawn of the internet, social media, and cable news, and now we're in this place of where's this thing going to go? Because most Republicans won't even talk to the media now.
I know. We only have an hour, right?
Right. No, let's do it. Let's do it. Someone go get us some bourbon. We'll fix this right now.
I have basically taught college level lectures on this stuff, and it's not a good picture out there. I was very lucky in that I came into journalism during the late part of its golden age, particularly for newspapers. When I think of 20 years ago and what we were allowed to do then, the travel that we got to do,
budget. You had a budget.
We had a budget. And it was healthy back then. The reason that the entire environment was healthier then from a news and a health of the Republic standpoint is we had more voices. We had more trained journalists out there doing the job. And the beauty of it was they were competing against each other. Mm-hmm. And that kept, that more than anything else, kept everybody honest.
Well, it kept everyone, on a level of information that they all shared and agreed to as a construct in every argument. I'd go to, or every debate rather, I went to, after I got out, this was like 2011, 2012, I went to a town hall with Congressman Bob Goodlatte, maybe 2013. And he's getting all these questions. I'm like, where are you getting this information? Mm-hmm. It's just not true. Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter because these people were pissed. Mm-hmm. They came to a town hall and they were blasting their congressman that they pretty much all voted for, but he wasn't doing enough. And for Bob Goodlatte to be called not conservative when he was one of the most conservative members of the House and pushed further to the right because his people, his voters, were getting information that was just not accurate, and it had no bearing on the reality that they were living.
Yeah, well, we live in an echo chamber now, Chris, where Moderate voices have just been sort of pushed aside, and the loudest voices on the different poles of the political spectrum seem to have taken over. And I think, even the term political spectrum is no longer operative, because now what some of these activists on each side of the fence believe and advocate is just completely off the charts. There's nothing that you can study in old school politics that prepares you for it.
No.
And so it's a much more complicated scene to cover. One thing that I make sure not to do is to suggest that today's journalists are inferior to those in my time. I think they're better.
Do you really?
I do, but they're outgunned. There are fewer.
The job is harder.
The job is much harder. The job is a moment by moment, second by second competition, and you don't have time to do the deep dives that we did. They don't have the time to just decamp and go to Galax or Gate City or Winchester, to report out a story like I had the luxury to do, and the expense account to do.
You had more time.
I had the time, and that contracted gradually over the years as electronics came in, and the pressure was on to not only get the story but get the tweet. We went from being measured in terms of 12-hour daily cycles, the AM cycle and the PM cycle, to being measured in seconds.
And because of that, days seem like weeks.
Yes.
Something that happens that was extraordinary in the morning, and like the Winsome Sears with the shoe this week. When she, it was a great moment. It was called in a British online journal called an iconic moment. And I'm going, okay, well, I couldn't go anywhere without people going, hey, did you see what Winston did? I'm like, well, wasn't that like last week?
Yeah.
It was yesterday.
That was so 10:30, Chris.
It was what's going right. It was so 10:30. It was so 10:30. That was noon. Where have you been? It's 12:30. Move on. But what is that doing to our body politic and our society when we're so rapid fire, having to make decisions that are based on?
Well, I think you see the consequences of it.
Facts.
What happens is fact and solid documented reporting takes a back seat to rumors, to absolute falsehoods, unvetted material, deliberate disinformation, and we're seeing it.
It's dangerous
all over the world. There's no saying that a lie can get halfway around the world before the truth can put its shoes on. And now, that's absolutely right.
And in the political context now, you can take that lie or that screw up by a politician, an unsavory word, or a damn near a felony, and go, you know what? Yeah, he screwed up. Let's make money on it. Because I'm attacked by my opponents. I can go to my base and say, I'm being attacked by my opponents. Send me money, and they send money.
Yeah,
it's political evangelism.
It is. It's gotten to be a professionalized hustle. Maybe I'll even say scam. But politics has really gotten to a level that 20 years ago I would not have predicted. It was
back in the day when Bob Melton was at the Washington Post and Bob Lewis. There's some great reporters. If they called you, it wasn't for a happy reason. You're like, I'm going to lose the election. Bob Melton called me. I'm like, check your shorts because something's terribly, terribly wrong.
It was like Mike Wallace showing up.
Oh, right, it's your business.
Office.
What's he doing here? It's not to give us Valentine's and stuff.
It's like the Southwest commercial. Want to get away?
Yeah, bing. Right.
But I was going through some old T-shirts. We're sort of throwing some things away. And 20 years ago, we printed up T-shirts. With the name for the Virginia Capital Correspondents Association. It had the logo on the front. On the back, it had the names of all the member publications. And it's like, 25 or 26 names. And those are just...
We had a press corps.
And those were just the full-time correspondents who were based here at the Capitol. And the last time I went to
You had TV trucks here, you had everybody.
Yes, you did. And you had, the press rooms in the Capitol and in the old General Assembly building were occupied, mostly year round.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't been in either of those press rooms in 8 years now, I guess. But I'm told that, unless they're actually in session and on the floor, nobody's in there.
Well, it's not pining for the glory days, people like nostalgia. This isn't nostalgia. This is a problem.
It is.
That our society is not being fully informed of what's going on around them, and they're being, I think, misled in a lot of ways and taken advantage of because, I'll talk to political consultants and I'll say, did you see this article in this particular paper? He says, what do I care about that for? Our people don't look at that paper. My job is to get those people to show up to vote, and that's it.
Yeah, Chris, you just can't cover the waterfront anymore. I mean, there's still some excellent journalism being done out there, and I'm going to, this is not a paid promotional message here, but I'm going to.
Go ahead, let it rip.
I'm not on the staff, but I'm going to say that, one of the bright spots that I've seen lately in journalism has been the Virginia Mercury. Bob Zullo, the editor, has put together an incredible staff over there. Some of the brightest young people that I have been privileged to practice around. I do a column once a month. They are on the beat every day and turning out quality stuff. They keep me young. I love being able to do this gig because...
Yeah, you're not the acerbic old guy.
I am the institutional memory.
You're not the curmudgeon that you could be. And frankly, you're really good at it.
That's right. That's right. Actually, I've mellowed a little bit in my age, but I just marvel at how smart and creative and able these people are.
And yet the knock on Virginia Mercury is what?
That their funding isn't disclosed.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
And because of that, there's always this area of, well, that's the Mercury. They're of the left, they're funded by the left, but we really don't know. We could do a deeper dive. And I've done some of that research. I'm like, just say who you are. Yeah. Let's get this out in the open. It doesn't take away from good journalism. Yeah. It doesn't take away from facts. The problem is it comes across as bias anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's everything out there now is interpreted as bias. But
of course it is.
Read the Mercury.
That's one of the problems.
Read the Mercury, read the coverage, read the reporting, and I think you'll come away persuaded that it's pretty balanced.
The problem, though, is no one on the right reads it and takes it seriously because it doesn't affect their elections. No one on the right is going to be moved. The opinion, the fact is, is going to be, so what?
I don't pretend for a minute that it carries the same station with decision makers that AP once did or the Post once did. But even AP and the Post don't carry that weight anymore.
They don't.
Because
when was the last time you saw an editorial come out in Virginia and change anything?
I don't know that I've ever seen one come out and change.
Remember when it was a big deal if the Richmond Times-Dispatch endorsed a Democrat?
Oh, I don't even think they do endorsements anymore.
They don't.
Yeah. So it's just a different world now.
But where is that world going? This is my concern and my question.
I don't know, Chris, and that's what bothers me. I don't have that crystal ball.
Yeah.
We can see the trends of where it's gotten us from, say, when I got into the business in the mid-'70s to now. And, the trend line certainly isn't good. For-profit news organizations are suffering. And honestly, I think most of them are going to have a very difficult time surviving the next few years. I look at the papers that are doing the best, and those are the papers that I think would succeed as subscriber-only organizations. Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Post.
They've changed their business models and doing quite well.
They have, but they also offer distinctive content that's not available anywhere else that people, you and I, are willing to pay for. It's you don't open those papers up and see 2-day-old wire stories.
Right.
That's the death knell right there. You've got to have something distinctive, something that nobody else can replicate. Because if you want to, you can read a Paris newspaper every morning. You can read the London Times. We're no longer bounded by geography.
Right.
The competition out there is so fierce. You've got to be able to offer someone a product that tells, in the case of medium-sized papers, what's going on in your community, why does it make a difference to you, data that only we have because only we care about it. I think that's the key to success for local mid-size newspapers. And until they invest in the product, invest in the reporting, and give people a reason to subscribe, I don't see anything getting any better.
Well, and I think the manifestation of all that is as we further disintegrate as a people, it accelerates because our common information is no longer common.
Yeah.
And we don't have anything to agree on.
No.
Because we don't have shared experiences anymore. Remember, again, this is not waxing nostalgic here, but there are only 3 channels, and everyone watched Newhart, or everyone watched Carol Burnett, or everyone watched MASH, or whatever it was, and you talked about it the next day at work.
Right.
We don't do that.
No.
And when I sit down and I didn't do it with Vivian Watts this morning, I ask typically every member of the legislature, well, where do you get your information? What movies and books and sports teams do you follow? And none of it overlaps. They don't have any shared experiences.
No.
How do they expect them to get along and go, yeah, I see what you're seeing?
I think that's at the heart of what we're talking about, Chris. When you don't share any experiences, and more importantly, you don't share any commonality with in terms of truth, in terms of knowledge of what's going on in the world, in terms of knowledge of your own government, then it's impossible to reach a consensus on anything. That's why we're a country hell-bent on arguing all the time about everything. That's why we form tribes that are constantly at war with one another.
Well, the tribes are for security reasons. Help me.
Yeah.
Agree with me.
Yeah.
Make me feel comfortable.
That and comfort. You have the comfort of a like-minded group, and where nobody is going to take exception with what you believe. And it bonds it tighter together. And the enemy becomes that group over there that believes none of what you
So used to be good friends.
Yeah.
I've lost good friends from my youth
absolutely.
over politics, and they assume I'm a certain way because they vote differently from me. And they don't call and say, hey, what do you mean by that?
That's extremely true.
I know you saved my life that one day, but I'm kind of upset by your post on Facebook.
Yeah. It really is a concerning thing. And Julie and I talk about that quite a bit, that over the last 8 years, we've had friendships ruptured.
Oh, family members.
Because, yeah.
And it's like, I do this for a living. I don't take it that seriously. And it's my paycheck.
That's one of the things, Chris, is people like us who have done it professionally, you as a policymaker and me as a journalist, we do have a broader perspective on this that average people don't have, and we sort of see the absurdity in it sometimes, and we can let it go. Ordinary people don't have that perspective, and they can't let it go.
Well, they choose not to let it go for a number of reasons. I don't slight them. It's not their fault.
Right.
And I don't think it's anyone's doing. It's just what's happening. Right. Our society is evolving to a point, especially with the internet and social media. Remember in the mid-aughts, it was blogging and all that was going on. And now we're in this Twitter world of, let's say something mean in 140 characters and tee-hee-hee, we got a lot of likes. So that's a sugar high. We love that kind of stuff. But, it's not helping. The other day we saw the governor mistake Senator Mamie Locke and Senator Louise Lucas, which is not easy to do. You have to.
Well, the poor guy doesn't even know where the restrooms are yet.
Right.
How's he going to know?
Well, and apparently he apologized to Louise. This was in Jeff Shapiro's column today, and it was like done. Look, I'm sorry. I used to get called Steve Landis every day. Chaz Evans Haywood is a clerk of the court in Harrisonburg, Rockingham County. Looks a lot like me. When he said go to a parade, I'm like, oh, thank God I don't have to, because everyone's going to think I was there because you were there, because we look so much alike, right? But in this context, the guy screws up. How many times have you sent a text to the wrong person? Hey, it wasn't meant for you.
Yeah.
But in this context, it goes on Twitter. Oh, then it's racial.
Yeah. It's we're a more imperfect society than we've ever than we've ever been, demanding more perfection than will ever be possible for any human being. And it just feeds the growing discontent and anger out there.
We're less imperfect. We're more imperfect than we ever have been.
Yeah.
And yet we have far more than we ever have. In all of human history, no one has it as good as we do, and yet we're far more imperfect than we ever have been. Why is that? We need liquor for this one. We need booze. Just going to have a booze session.
That's so deep, Chris. You know, I mean, I've only got a bachelor's degree. What do you want from me?
That's it for me. I scratched out European history. Come on.
I don't know. Maybe we need to bring a pastor or somebody in here for that one. It's a hell of a question, and you know, I wring my hands over society, and then I try to say, well, you've always wrung your hands over society. It's a professional hazard, right. Occupational hazard. And, you know, it's like I've always said, well, we're going to hell in a handbasket. But things just seem different now. The world's never seemed as much on edge as it is. You know, I can remember the Cold War in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, God. And I hate to interrupt you, but I have to on this one.
Uh-huh.
Some idiot on Twitter, I think was working for NBC Sports, trying to like build up the Olympics.
Right.
Said that one of the hockey matches that we played was on par with the Miracle on Ice. I was like, why is this phone still in my hand and not firmly lodged in my drywall? Because that was one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. I mean, you can't conflate, you can't build that up.
No.
I mean, and I tweeted out, there's no way you were born in the 80s, let alone the 70s and the 60s.
Even if there were a game as great as the Miracle on Ice,
it doesn't.
You don't understand the context of the world as it existed in 1980.
In 79, we were on the precipice of a disastrous relationship with the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
The economy was poo in the bowl, let's just be honest.
Yeah.
The only thing going well was the Steelers and the Pirates were winning, let's be honest too. That was the ray of hope for all of America.
There you go.
You know, that's what kept me going as a 14-year-old. But that game changed our country.
It sure did. It sure did. That game started 1980, and 1980 went the way of that game because Ronald Reagan picked up on that theme, and
the election.
The next thing you know, he's the president.
Yeah.
It started a theme that year, and suddenly it was cool to wave a flag again. And but in the Cold War,
but remember that game? It wasn't live.
No, it wasn't.
It was tape delayed.
Yeah, it had to be.
And I went down to my friend's house, next door neighbor's house, and I ran down the basement and said, "Hey, we beat the Russians." And they're like, "No!" They were watching it right there. They're like, "Damn it, Saxman." Oh, shit.
Spoiler alert.
Sorry about that.
But back to the point I was making, in the Cold War, I remember growing up not far from a strategic air command base in northeast Arkansas. I remember drills where you literally had to, get under your desks as if that was going to somehow shield you from
a
nuclear blast.
Did you wear a mask?
No mask then.
Sorry, had to do it.
During the Cold War, we were afraid of all-out war, but we always had some level of confidence that the doctrine of mutually assured destruction would prevail. Because
was it
Khrushchev,
confidence or just hope?
Well, it was hope born of some confidence because we had seen
competence too.
Competence, yeah. In 1962, we had seen Khrushchev back the missiles out of Cuba.
Right. He blinked.
He blinked. We had seen tensions rise and pass because we, on some level, despite the rhetoric that was so raw in the time, we figured that there were people at the top who didn't want to incinerate the world and die with everybody else.
Right.
Now, I'm not so sure that level of sanity is in place all over the world. I mean, do you think for a second Kim Jong-un would hesitate to take out the west coast of the United States if he had the means? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it is far more scary. And then in another way, I think about this, and I look at Russia and China and their aggressiveness these days. And outward aggression is always a sign of internal turmoil in my read. And because we are so intertwined economically, there's just this stasis that occurs. There's always this we're not going to attack our best customers.
Right.
I mean, if we do that, what's going to happen to me internally? And I think that's an evolution that we don't talk about, because I think in today's context, especially with the Ukraine issue right now, we get worried about these things because we haven't experienced that reality in over 30 years.
Well, I hope I impute more sanity to Putin than he's showing. I mean, I think he has some sort of a God complex, and he has this vision of himself as the guy who restores the old Soviet empire.
That's definitely who he is.
And I think the decisive question is, how much does that prevail over every other consideration? If he wants to bring Poland and the Czech Republic and Latvia, Lithuania, and all of those back into the Russian orbit, and is willing to use force to keep them out of NATO, where do we go? Bothers me.
And that, because we were in the Cold War era, our thoughts are formed by that very different construct. I mean, daily nuclear holocaust. Kids are worried about masks, and they're like, but the kids come home and like, really? Did you do nuclear holocaust drills in school when you were growing up? Did you do those things? Right. Because we did.
We did.
That was part of our being, and we just kind of got over it. Like, well, it's either going to happen or it's not. So might as well just live your life. And hello, 70s, just woohoo.
Well, I mean, I can remember the palpable fear in my parents over the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Really?
Yes, I do. And I really wasn't old enough to grasp it. Well, I was old enough to grasp the fear that they showed. And then a year or two later, I was able to grasp the anguish that I saw in them when President Kennedy was shot.
Right.
It's an experience.
And this generation has 9/11.
As a second grader or a third grader, it doesn't leave you.
And in today's world, it's 9/11.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's already leaving our psyche.
Yeah.
And we've sort of gone past all that, and we're so intensely ingrained in our momentariness. And I'm like the worst at these things, right? And that's part of our reality. And I guess getting back to the original part of the conversation, where do we turn this all in a more positive direction and get away from this tribal warfare, minute-to-minute combat, it seems, that is also financially beneficial to those who want the war?
Chris, this is not a happy answer, but it usually takes a rock bottom experience before things get better.
Right.
And I hope we don't have that. And I despair at what that might look like. I mean, I think we're beyond the point where a Kumbaya moment is possible.
No, because 9/12 America was America at its best. December 8th, 1941, was when we were like, hey, hold on a tick. This is unacceptable. We have a common thing. We don't have that common thing anymore. And I'll never forget, I was at one of those pancake breakfasts one morning back home, and this guy was talking about politics. What's it going to take to bring our country together? So you really don't want to contemplate that, because the dire nature of that reality would be completely destructive. And people say, and this is not to throw water on the whole make America great again, but we have to remember, after World War II, when America was great, it's because the rest of the world was decimated.
Yeah.
And people don't put that into context. Wait till you talked about context earlier. After World War II, we had no competition. The world was destroyed. The world's economy was destroyed. Yeah. Who was the only one left who could provide any resources, any products, anything?
The war never came to our shores.
It never came here.
Yeah.
And we were more than equipped to deal with it. And then we couldn't deal with the fact that we had competition finally coming to us. And we did that whole thing in the 70s and 80s. And the Soviet Union and everything. But that's completely different than what we have today. It's a far more difficult, painful world of, we don't get to just have American hegemony anymore because we have serious, at least economic competition out there.
Yeah, and we've got serious economic troubles of our own as well. And, I don't know how this resolves itself. I don't know if, I do believe if it continues for another 2 years, this will be a one-term president. He may be a one-term president anyway. But it's going to change things. I mean, tell me anybody who isn't predicting a Republican takeover of Congress this year.
It's almost a certainty.
Right.
The only thing that could backstop that for Democrats is, ironically, the redistricting in in New York, California, Illinois, and having control and switching those seats up.
Yeah.
I still don't see the math as stopping it.
But that's still not going to. I mean, look, Texas gained seats, and we've seen how redistricting has gone in Texas. I mean, that state's not only going to get another Republican seat, it's redistricting their current seats to get more blue seats than red.
Right.
And
the outlook for the Biden-Harris administration is not favorable. Even, Clinton in '94 turned it around. '95 he went to the State of the Union and said, the era of big government's over. 30 years later, here we are, right?
Right.
Big
Exactly
government,
right.
ginormous government.
And a government that grows no matter which party is in power.
That hasn't stopped, has it?
No. Despite all the polemics that we hear about it, and I'm not sure either party is interested in small government anymore.
That whole conversation is out the door.
Yeah.
Where are the libertarians?
Who?
Speaking of third parties, what?
Yeah. It's we're in a very politically volatile time. Not only is the economy roiling everything, the unpredictability and virulence of this pandemic, just when you think you've tamped it down, there's another variant that ravages the world. How well are we going to do? How well are vaccines going to do? How much acceptance are the vaccines going to have? Those questions, I think, are going to have a big bearing on how well the economy recovers over the next few years, or whether it recovers.
And I'm sensing in the pandemic now, this energy building. It's like kids want to get out for summer recess, right? It's just like, let us out. Just call this thing off. Let's just go. I think. Are you sensing that? Are you feeling that out there? It's like, look, come on, Can we just dial it back a notch and go be where we were 2 years ago?
Yeah, I really do. And the thing that I sense from all of this is the pandemic on one level has been bad. We're up to almost 800,000, 900,000 deaths now attributed to the coronavirus. But
still managed to have the Olympics in Beijing. Congratulations. Good stuff there, fellas.
But
Wuhan. Sorry.
The pandemic's been bad enough, but the way government has bungled everything from the start.
Both parties.
Both parties.
Both administrations. Those train wrecks of press conferences that President Trump had were like, what are you doing? He made Northam's press release when he was going to do the moonwalk seem like a piker. He was like, are you kidding? You're doing this every day? Every day. And everyone's like, would you please just take the camera away from this man? And if he had dealt with I believe, the pandemic in a far better way, he'd have been reelected. I
think so. Yeah, well, no, I know so. The polling bears it out. The pandemic was the leading reason that Trump lost votes.
And that's at time as an American president or a politician say, look, folks, this is Republican, Democratic side. This is the way of the deal. This is real. Yeah. This is serious. Let's get it together.
Anyway, a virus was somehow politicized.
That's where we are.
Yeah, that's where we are.
That's where we are.
And then you say, well, at least the science is steady, right? But look at the CDC.
They're all over the place.
What a basket case. What a dumpster fire it's been. They're behind the curve at every step.
Well, and then when did we see the government authority to the CDC? CDC guidelines have to do this. I didn't vote for the CDC. That's not how we do this.
Right.
This is a democratic republic.
Yeah. But I mean, you can't. The science can't be here today and there tomorrow. I admit, that we're learning.
And people justifying both. Well, it's okay over here. Well, it's okay over there.
Well, we're learning. I get that. And yes, the virus itself mutates and changes.
Right.
But still, I mean,
But we don't. We dig in deeper. We dig. We keep digging.
And lost in it all in this fog of war over COVID, Chris, is the trust that we'll go back to what we were talking about earlier. The trust that's been ruptured in the population out there in everything now. Science.
Yeah.
Government.
How many times you've gone out in public and you've seen people wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, and they look at you differently because you're not doing what they're doing. They give you that side eye at the grocery store, like, really now?
Yeah.
I'm just getting groceries.
Right.
I don't need this.
Yeah.
I don't need the judgy thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And people, if you're wearing a mask, you judge the people who aren't. If you're not wearing a mask, you judge the people who are.
That's insane.
And I wear a mask in the grocery because I'm 66. I'm a little overweight. I don't want to risk it. I don't want to take it.
I was going
home
to say
to
svelte,
my
but
wife. Yeah. But
husky.
it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. There's no slam against somebody who's not.
Right. I don't understand. I guess we were raised in a different time in a different place. We're just like, you don't say that about someone. You don't think you're not supposed to think that about somebody. Yeah. They're doing their own thing. I mean, that was the whole, that was like America in the 60s and 70s, like do your own thing. But there was a point in which the judginess, it just becomes destructive. And people were on the right were just like overjoyed that people at the Super Bowl weren't wearing masks. I'm like, this has been your point all along. They're agreeing with you. Why are you calling them out? Just say thank you and move on.
Yeah.
Just not castigate them and try to drag them down. Oh, all right. Send out a fundraising email.
Well, I think politeness, for lack of a better word, has been essentially killed.
Manners.
Manners. Just basic consideration for other people. I think
until you meet them one-on-one.
Yeah, when you meet them one-on-one and you can talk. If you can do that, that's not possible all the time now. No. Depending on your politics, because I've tried it with some people and it hasn't gone well. And that's fairly new. But I think to some extent, these phones, the fact that we're hardwired 24 hours a day into these echo chambers.
He's not judging you, by the way.
Into
camera guy over there, still lamenting the Bengals loss. It just makes me so happy.
Me too, brother. Me too. But we're so used to flaming each other on social media. It's reflexive.
For what end?
Yeah, and it just sort of takes over.
It's not even a sugar high.
It intrudes into your everyday life. And that's particularly true for younger people who didn't grow up in a time when, at least manners, as you put it, politeness, the ability to talk one-on-one, having grown up in a time when people actually sat out on the porch and talked, when,
with their neighbors.
Yeah, with neighbors. In a day when,
neighbors.
Yeah, when you weren't glued to the phone or watching television, which wasn't universally available in the South in my youth. So it was a far different time.
But
people knew the art of conversation back then.
Well, and I think we can, this is not I hate to say how bad things are, because as we pointed out, we've said this before, we live in a time in which we've never had more. In all of human history, we in this room have more than 99.99% of people who've ever lived. The standard of living, if we call it that, is never been better.
Yeah.
And we're not happy with that.
Well,
I think because what we gave up in that process was what makes us truly happy is being around our family and friends.
What I'm worried about, Chris, is, for folks our age, I'm considerably older than you, but we've done okay. What I worry about is, are our kids going to have it as well as we did? Are my sons going to be able to own a house as I do? The world is not as kind now to them as it was to us. Kids coming out of college, a lot of them are having to do gig work, 2 or 3 jobs, and maybe none of them paying health benefits. It's a real eye opener to see what some of these kids are going through.
And so much of our economic and fiscal and our geopolitical outlook was shaped by that Cold War different trajectory, economic trajectory that we had. You get a job for life, for generations.
That's right.
But that was because we had no competition. Now we're living in a hyper-competitive global environment. We've got to do all these different things. We worry about the trajectory for our kids' future because our trajectory was extremely different. Was extremely different. And now we have to go back and reset all these policies to help our next generation. But you go, well, those policies were bad when we were growing up. We can't do that anymore. Like, well, this is a different world. You can't explain it to some people because that's how they voted all their life. And you go, well, it's a little bit more complicated now.
Yeah. The rules of the.
But if you say that, you're condescending.
I mean, not only do the rules of the 1970s no longer apply, the rules of the 2000s don't even apply.
Isn't that staggering?
It is.
It's absolutely staggering.
Absolutely.
It's how much has changed. The acceleration, and I don't want to say of the decline of this of the disruption in our system, because it's going to settle out.
That's a good word.
It's going to settle out somewhere, and I don't know. And I think that's the unsettling part, is where it's going to settle out.
Yeah.
We don't know.
We don't
know. This is the roulette table, right? Where's that damn ball going to go? This is not 22 in Casablanca where you push a button and get what the guy needs to get out of the country, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good word, is disruption. And it's spinning faster and faster and faster, which just creates that much more uncertainty.
Yeah.
And, I hope the world that we that one day when we're gone and the kids are trying to make sense of it all, our
looking at the archives.
Yeah, I hope they're not confronted with questions quite as menacing and disturbing as the ones that we're dealing with right now.
Well, I think, and we'll end here, because you and I could do this all day long and have in the past.
Yes, we have.
And
usually
sitting
drinks.
next to each other with a bar and television.
Yeah.
I think it's going to settle out, and decisions will be made how they're going to live their lives. They're going to say, here, boom, and they're going to do it societal. They're going to do it as a generation. They're going to say, we're going to buy houses. We're going to settle down. We're not doing this anymore. We saw what our parents did, and we're not doing that anymore. Our lives are going to be different. And our generation is going to go, yeah, it was a pretty good decision. And it'll be based on some very good things we hopefully will have left behind with them. But it's scary as hell.
Very scary. And, just as what I'm hoping is that this next generation, the generation coming along now, I know they're more resourceful than mine was, than we boomers have been. I hope they're tougher too. We boomers had a pretty good time of it, if you think about it. We came along in the late 40s, 50s, early 60s, when the country was flush with success. We were the unchallenged power in the world.
Different trajectory.
Yeah, and
go and be and do anything you want to.
And I don't think I think we've, as a generation, I think we boomers have taken more than we're giving back. I'm sorry to say.
Well, I'm on the cusp, Gen X, and a little more introspection from boomers might be helpful at this stage of the game.
Yeah.
To go, we do have this, and we did do this, and without being pejorative to the generation, which has brought a lot of positive change, I do see a generational war coming, because the kids are going to go, no, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, I'm not paying into your Social Security anymore.
Yeah, I'm
getting nothing out.
I'm getting nothing out of this.
Yeah,
that's
going to happen.
And the numbers show that the boomers are going to lose that fight. And at the same time, they've got all this massive amount of wealth that has to transfer from one generation to the next. And how's it going to get there?
Or unless you want to spend it on a beach house in Boca Raton. I don't know.
We can do this all day long. All right, let's get some predictions.
Okay.
SEC football this year, who do you think? Aside from Alabama and Georgia?
That's hard to say. I mean, we have to see what happens, with Brian Kelly at LSU. Is he going to bring them back? I don't know that the same thing that he applied at Notre Dame is going to work in Baton Rouge.
Different recruiting model.
Far different recruiting model, and how tied in is he to that? I mean, LSU is with Alabama, the traditional power in the West, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, look at the way Texas A&M has been recruiting. Look at their facilities. Look at what they've got. Mm-hmm. I thought really that Texas A&M would be a juggernaut this past season, and I was surprised that they wound up only 8-4. They did beat Alabama, but we kicked their butts in Oxford.
That's why what's his face, Riley left Oklahoma.
Lincoln Riley
didn't want to go to the SEC West.
No. In the East, where does Florida go? That's the other traditional power in the East. Mm-hmm. Is Tennessee really on the rebound? So
South Carolina had a good recruiting year. They overperformed with their new coach.
Yeah, right. Yeah, part of the Beamer tree. Yeah. The question is does Virginia Tech call him back home at some point?
I don't think so. I don't think you want to play in that shadow, in that home.
Maybe not.
I don't know. That's a tough one.
Maybe not.
Tough one. Anyway.
But that family loves Tech.
Well, again, do you do that to your kid? Right. So it goes back to the exact same conversation we're having about our kids, the next generation. Go do your own thing.
Oh yeah.
If you want to come home, that's great. But can you live up to that legacy?
I know it's like
that's a tough one.
It's an issue that we're dealing with at my alma mater. Where's my hat? But Ole Miss is trying to get Arch Manning, the grandson of Archie,
not happening.
Nephew of Eli. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's probably going to wind up at Texas or Alabama. Yeah. And Texas pulled a smart move. They are about to hire David Cutcliffe, who was the head coach at Duke.
And was the quarterback coach for Peyton Manning.
And he was the head coach for Eli at Ole Miss.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah, he's the Manning whisperer. And so Texas is trying to hire him as an offensive analyst. Yes. And, hoping that is the magic glue that brings
I didn't realize that Cutcliffe was the head coach at Ole Miss when Eli was there.
He was.
I did not know.
Took the Rebels to a Cotton Bowl game. First New Year's Day bowl game they've had in a long time.
All right. Well, hotty toddy. Thanks, Bob Lewis, for coming in here, joining me on the VIP
Chris.
Podcast, brought to you by VCTA, the Broadband Association of Virginia, and Virginia Free. Thanks for joining us, and please subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, also on Spotify and Apple. Thanks for joining us.